Prime Minister and I will be glad to answer 2 questions per side. First, Mr. Prime Minister, welcome back. It is so wonderful to see you. He is a good friend of mine. Denmark is a good friend of America. Appreciate your contributions to transatlantic ties. Prime Minister has made very constructive and helpful comments to make sure that the transatlantic ties between the United States and Europe are strong, and I want to thank you for your leadership role. I also appreciate your clear understanding about the historic times in which we live, the times in which more and more people are becoming free. Appreciate your strong support for those who desire to live in a democracy in Iraq. Thank you for your contributions to a new democracy called Afghanistan. I thank you for your very constructive work in helping the Palestinians develop a democratic state that can live side by side with Israel in peace. So welcome back. It's good to see you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm happy to be back in Washington. It's my 4th visit as Prime Minister, which underlines that the United States and Denmark are close friends and allies. We share the same fundamental values. We are allied in our efforts to promote freedom and democracy worldwide. And I'm happy to say, in addition to this, that I appreciate very much your straightforward style. I consider you a friend, and I know that with you I'll always have a very frank discussion and exchange of views, so I'm happy to be back.
Fortunately, he's not that good a friend that I would go running with him. He's one of the best runners in the world, amongst the world leaders. Yeah, he's a good one. Deb.
Mr. President, on stem cells, specifically, would you veto legislation that loosened the requirements on federal funding for stem cell research? And secondly, what's your reaction to the news overnight about the South Korean cloning embryo?
I am, first, I'm very concerned about cloning. I worry about a world in which cloning becomes acceptable. Secondly, I made my position very clear on embryonic stem cells. I'm a strong supporter of adult stem cell research, of course, but I made it very clear to the Congress that the use of federal money, taxpayers' money, to promote science which destroys life in order to save life is I'm against that, and therefore if the bill does that, I will veto it.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes.
How do you react to the continuing reports about mistreatment of prisoners held by American military around the world, and also the perception abroad that the ones that are paying for it are low-ranking soldiers, but that nobody higher up has taken any responsibility?
Yeah. I think the world ought to be pay attention to the contrast between a society which was run by a brutal tyrant in which there was no transparency, and a society in which the whole world watches a government find the facts, lay the facts out for the citizens to see, and that punishment, when appropriate, be delivered. If I'm not mistaken, I think about over 20% of the people thus far that have been held to account as a result of the Abu Ghraib issue have been officers. There have been over, I think, 8 or 9 investigations by independent investigators that have made the reports very public. I'm comfortable that we're getting to the bottom of the situation, and I know we're doing so in a transparent way. Obviously, ours is a country that respects human rights and human dignity, and those rights and dignity have been denied. We will hold people to account. Steve.
Sir, do you worry that the publication of the Saddam photo along with the Newsweek story will further inflame tensions and inspire the Iraqi insurgency and anti-Americanism in the Middle East?
Now, I think the Iraq insurgency is inspired by their desire to stop the March of Freedom. Remember, these are ideologues of that murder innocent people in order to spread their dark vision of hate. And therefore, when light begins to show up in the form of democracy, it frightens them. There is no future for these haters in a free world. And so they're inspired by the fact that they see democracy emerging in Iraq. That's what causes them to want to kill. They're frightened by the fact that, and inspired the wrong way, by the way, by the fact that Afghanistan is free. They're seeing the people in Lebanon demand free and fair elections. And their ideology cannot survive in a democratic society. See, the only way they can survive is to try to shake our will by killing innocent life. And that's why our strategy in Iraq is to train the Iraqis so that they themselves can fight off these terrorists. Listen, 8.5 million people went to the polls in spite of the fact that people had been killed and there was incredible intimidation, and they defied the bombers. I mean, these people want to be free, and the killers don't want them to be free. And so our strategy is to help the Iraqis realize the dream of a free society. And when the Iraqi troops are properly trained, and we're headed that direction, of course, it'll take less of a coalition effort to help this new democracy get started. Yes, Steve?
What about the Saddam photo? Does that have an
Well, you asked me whether or not that would inspire people. I don't think a photo inspires murderers. I think they're inspired by an ideology that is so barbaric and backwards that it's hard for many in the Western world to comprehend how they think. But I would just remind people all they need, if you want to know how ideologically grim their vision of the world is, just remember the Taliban. And they said if you don't agree with our religious views, you'll be prosecuted. If you're a woman who seeks freedom, you'll be beaten. So these people are motivated by a vision of the world that is backward and barbaric.
Mr. President, while the Danish people might support war and appreciate the progress in Iraq, they're also curious when our soldiers will come back home. Can you
Yes.
Elaborate on that?
Well, I appreciate that question a lot, and of course I get asked that in our own country a lot. And my answer is it makes no sense to set a timetable. And the reason why is because it'll allow an enemy to adjust. On the other hand, as I tell our folks, is that we would like to get our troops out as quickly as possible. And the definition of that will be how soon our commanders on the ground think that the Iraqis are able to take the fight to the enemy. I just got off of a video, which I'm looking forward to briefing the Prime Minister on, with General Casey, who is our general on the ground. He's a commander of the coalition forces. And he was describing to us the Iraqi training and the quality of training. And some units are in really good shape, and other units need additional work. But one of the things that's important to understand is the Iraqi government understands that as civilian governments change, there needs to be stability in the military and a chain of command that links top to bottom. And General Casey knows we're making progress toward establishing that chain of command. My answer to the Danish people is as soon as we can possibly get it done. We've got to complete the mission. A free Iraq in the midst of the Middle East is going to be a powerful agent for peace. Listen, thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much.